Light seafood entrees.
He lost it, right there on live television. In front of millions of Americans, Johnny Carson, the most composed man in late-night history, couldn't stop laughing. For 30 years, he was the master of timing, the calm in every storm, the king behind the desk. But every once in a while, something happened on The Tonight Show that broke even Carson himself. From animal chaos to celebrity pranks, from Don Rickles destroying the set to Robin Williams turning the studio into a madhouse, these were the nights when control simply didn't exist. Because when Carson laughed, the whole country laughed with him. It wasn't scripted, it wasn't polished. It was pure human joy, the kind that made television feel alive. Tonight, we're counting down 10 insane moments Johnny Carson couldn't stop laughing, from the unbelievable to the downright absurd. Stay until the very end. Because moment one isn't just hilarious, it's one of the most unforgettable live TV meltdowns ever caught on camera. It was the golden age of television, when every living room in America glowed with that familiar blue light. The Tonight Show wasn't just a late-night program. It was a ritual. Families tuned in, laughter filled the room, and Johnny Carson became more than a host. He was part of the household. Every night, behind that wooden desk on NBC's Burbank stage, Carson created a world where anything could happen. Hollywood legends, musicians, comedians, all walked through those curtains, not knowing whether they'd deliver the joke or become the joke. There was a magic in those moments, the unpredictability, the warmth, the way Carson's smile could turn a mistake into television gold. He had that rare gift, the ability to make the entire country forget its worries, if only for an hour. For millions, those nights weren't just entertainment. They were memories. Moments shared between friends, families, and generations. And sometimes, under the golden studio lights, one tiny, unexpected moment of laughter would turn into something unforgettable. Now, let's go back to those unforgettable nights, when laughter took over the stage. When even the king of late night himself couldn't hold it together. From shattered props to wild animals, from celebrity chaos to unscripted genius, these were the moments that reminded everyone why The Tonight Show was unlike anything else on television. So sit back and relive the laughter. Because these are the 10 times Johnny Carson completely lost it on live TV, starting with a guest who turned his studio upside down. At moment 10, Don Rickles breaks the set. It started like any other night, until Don Rickles walked in. Carson was mid-monologue when Rickles barged onto the stage, swinging a prop door and shouting, "You ruined my show!" Moments earlier, Rickles had been filming CPO Sharky next door, only to find that Carson had accidentally broken his cigarette box during a bit. What followed was pure chaos, Rickles mocking the crew, Carson chasing him with the broken prop, and the audience screaming. It was spontaneous, absurd, and completely unscripted. Carson leaned back, tears in his eyes, laughing harder than anyone else. It wasn't just a comedy bit. It was friendship, timing, and madness all colliding on live TV. That night, America saw something rare. 2 legends losing control and loving every second of it. At moment 9, animal handler chaos. No one could predict what would happen when animals came to The Tonight Show. One evening, Carson welcomed a zookeeper with what was supposed to be a calm little collection of critters. But calm didn't last long. A monkey leapt onto Johnny's head, a snake slithered off the table, and the handler completely lost control. The audience roared. Carson tried to keep his composure, but the more he tried, the harder he laughed. At one point, the monkey tugged at his tie and Carson collapsed in laughter, gasping for air. It was chaos, pure, joyful chaos. No script, no cue cards, just the magic of live television doing what it does best, surprise everyone. Even decades later, that clip remains one of the funniest Tonight Show moments ever, a reminder that sometimes the wildest guests aren't human. At moment 8, Robin Williams' giggle fit. When Robin Williams stepped onto Carson's stage, no one, not even Johnny, could predict what would happen next. He was a storm of energy, words flying faster than the audience could breathe. Within seconds, Carson was gone. Doubled over, unable to speak, clutching his desk as Robin kept firing joke after joke. Williams mimicked animals, politicians, and even Johnny himself, all in a single breath. The audience howled. The band couldn't play. Carson wiped tears from his eyes, whispering, "You're out of control," before collapsing into laughter again. It wasn't just an interview. It was improv lightning, pure and unrehearsed. Two comic minds feeding off each other's chaos until the entire room dissolved into laughter. For late-night fans, that night wasn't a talk show. It was a live explosion of genius. At moment 7, Burt Reynolds' shaving cream. Fight It began as a friendly interview, Burt Reynolds, charming as ever, trading jokes with Johnny. But when Burt playfully splashed some water at guest Dom DeLuise, all hell broke loose. Within seconds, cups were flying, the desk was drenched, and someone brought out shaving cream. Reynolds smeared a handful across DeLuise's face. DeLuise struck back, and Johnny, caught in the crossfire, took a full blast to the head. The audience screamed. The band stopped playing. Carson sat there dripping with foam, laughing so hard he could barely breathe. It was absolute mayhem. 3 grown men acting like kids on national television. No script, no plan. Just the kind of unpredictable madness that made The Tonight Show immortal. That night proved one thing. When Burt Reynolds showed up, you never knew how clean the set would be when it ended. At moment 6, Dean Martin's perfect prank. Dean Martin didn't need a script. His charm was the joke. When he visited The Tonight Show, Carson expected smooth talk and that signature grin. Instead, Dean decided to test Johnny's composure. He walked on stage pretending to be half asleep, his drink in hand, tie undone, and eyes barely open. The audience roared before he even said a word. Then, without missing a beat, Dean started rearranging Johnny's desk, papers, pens, even his coffee cup, as if he owned the place. Carson tried to keep it together, but Dean's effortless mischief had him breaking mid-sentence, laughing into his microphone. It was the kind of humour that didn't need punchlines, just timing, charm, and a little chaos. That night captured everything viewers loved about both men. Carson's grace, Dean's swagger, and a friendship that made comedy look easy. At moment 5, George Gobel's tuxedo line. Sometimes the funniest moments came from the quietest guests. When comedian George Gobel sat beside Dean Martin and Bob Hope, the stage already felt too full of legends. So Gobel waited, then delivered one of the sharpest one-liners in Tonight Show history. He looked around the couch and said softly, "Did you ever get the feeling that the world's a tuxedo and you're a pair of brown shoes?" The room exploded. Carson fell back in his chair, laughing uncontrollably. Even Dean Martin, drink in hand, nearly spilled it all over the set. It was perfect timing, perfect humility, perfect Gobel. No shouting, no chaos, just one line that silenced the greats. That moment reminded everyone that comedy wasn't about volume. It was about truth, timing, and the courage to be the odd one out in a tuxedo world. At moment 4, Carson crying, laughing with Doc Severinsen. It started with a simple mix-up during the monologue. Johnny stumbled over a line, and before he could recover, his bandleader, the ever-stylish Doc Severinsen, threw in a quick jab. "That's why I play trumpet, Johnny. I actually know my notes." The audience roared, but Johnny lost it completely. He tried to continue, but every time he looked over at Doc, the laughter came back harder. Tears streamed down his face as he gasped for breath, pounding the desk, shaking his head. Doc just stood there, grinning, milking every second of it, with perfect comedic timing. It was unscripted, genuine, and filled with the warmth of 2 men who'd shared 1,000 nights on that stage. By the time the band kicked back in, Johnny was still wiping his eyes, proof that the best laughs often come from friendship, not jokes. At moment 3, the potato chip lady, 1987. Some moments on The Tonight Show start quietly and end in absolute legend. In 1987, Carson welcomed a sweet elderly guest who collected potato chips shaped like famous people. She brought a box filled with her treasures, showing off chips that looked like Elvis, Nixon, and even Johnny himself. Carson leaned in, pretending to take a closer look, then crunched one. The audience gasped. The woman froze, and Carson completely lost it. He tried to apologize, but his laughter drowned out the words. Tears streamed down his face as he handed her the empty chip, saying, "I think I just ate the king." The studio erupted. It was absurd, innocent, and timeless. A moment that proved why Carson was untouchable. Even when breaking the rules, he made the world laugh harder than ever. At moment 2, Carson and Doc's emotional moment. It wasn't chaos this time. It was something deeper. On Johnny's final week hosting The Tonight Show, Doc Severinsen led the band into a soft, familiar tune, the theme they had played together for decades. Carson tried to deliver a light-hearted farewell, but his voice cracked. He looked over at Doc, who smiled, holding back his own tears. For once, there were no jokes, no punchlines, just two old friends, realizing the laughter was coming to an end. The audience stood, applauding for what felt like forever. Carson lowered his head, eyes wet, whispering, "You've made my nights, Doc." It was a rare moment of silence on a show built on laughter, a reminder that even legends have hearts behind the humour. And in that silence, the bond between them spoke louder than any monologue ever could. At moment one, the legendary Carson meltdown, 1987. It happened live, and no one has ever forgotten it. During a simple sketch, everything that could go wrong did. Props broke, timing collapsed, and Johnny Carson, the man who could survive any disaster, finally surrendered to laughter. He tried to speak, but every word set him off again. He slid down behind his desk, shoulders shaking, tears running down his face as the audience screamed with joy. Ed McMahon laughed so hard he nearly fell out of his chair, and the band had to stop playing entirely. For 2 full minutes, television simply stopped. Just laughter, real and uncontrollable. It wasn't comedy anymore. It was Carson, raw and human, showing America what joy really looked like. That night became legend. The moment the king of late night couldn't keep his crown on, because he was laughing too hard to wear it. When the laughter finally faded, Carson sat back in his chair, still smiling, still wiping his eyes. For a brief moment, the stage felt quiet. No music, no punchline, just the sound of one man catching his breath after 3 decades of making the world laugh. Maybe that's why people loved him so much, because beyond the jokes and the chaos, there was always something honest. The joy of being human, the courage to laugh at life when nothing goes right. The cameras kept rolling, but Johnny wasn't performing anymore. He was simply there, grateful, humbled, and completely real. And for millions watching at home, it felt the laughter wasn't just his anymore. It belonged to everyone. Decades have passed since those nights in Burbank, yet somehow the laughter still echoes. Johnny Carson didn't just host a show. He built a world. A place where movie stars, musicians, and everyday people could sit under the same warm lights and simply be human. He turned mistakes into magic, silence into rhythm, and laughter into something eternal. Every giggle, every pause, every glance toward Ed McMahon or Doc Severinsen became part of a shared national memory. And when new generations discover those clips today, the ones where Johnny loses control, where he can't stop laughing, they don't just see comedy. They see joy, authenticity, and the golden age of connection. Because Johnny Carson didn't teach America how to laugh. He reminded us that we already knew how. We just needed someone brave enough to laugh first. That's why, even now, we still miss that sound. Which Carson moment made you laugh the hardest? Was it Don Rickles breaking the set, or that unforgettable potato chip lady? Tell us in the comments. We love hearing which moments bring back your memories. And don't miss the next episode in our Carson Guests Countdown, where we revisit the night Johnny shared his stage with one of the most controversial guests in late-night history. Thank you for watching and for keeping the laughter alive. Because as Johnny once said, if you buy the premise, you buy the bit. Stay nostalgic, and we'll see you in the next one.